by speaking to some things that I believe should be dealt with. Um, we normally rise and speak about this house being an august house, and I'm not too sure if sometimes we understand what that means. The whole word august. Sometimes they say August, not recognizing that that is not how you should pronounce the word. And it means respected and impressive. And so when I sit here, and not only myself, I heard the Honourable Priya Manichan actually speaking to it about the crass and uncouth behavior of many members of the National Assembly. Even when they're not at the podium, it resonates and it gets online even if you're not in front of the mic. And people in this National Assembly seem unable to live by the standard that should be set as members of this House. We are asked to, and in some cases demanded.
Honourable members, Honourable Kwame McCoy, it is important that every member is given fair opportunity to be heard, and I would like to hear what the presentations are.
We are asked to and oftentimes demanded that we call each other honourable. And that title, I think, requires also a certain level of responsibility by those who are hold that title. And so, Mr. Speaker, sorry about that. And so, Mr. Speaker, I would like to first state that as members of Parliament, we should have or hold higher standards, recognize that when we're in this National Assembly, it's not about a laugh and a joke. It's about representing the people. It's about representing the people and the interests of the people. And so everything that we say and do should be in the interest of the people. Now, Mr. Speaker, on that note, I should also add that it also bothers me when members of Parliament, in particular ministers, come to this National Assembly and behave in this manner, how it is that they actually treat their staff in their ministries. That, for me, is bothering. And it begs the question whether the public servants in the various ministries are working under conditions that are not the best. Now, you see, Mr. Speaker, yesterday I have the honor, or I'm not sure, the fortune or misfortune of shadowing the Ministry of Public Service. And yesterday, though I wasn't here, I was able to listen to the, if we call it a presentation, from the Minister of Public Service. And at the end of that presentation, Mr. Speaker, the only two things that came to mind was whether or not the minister was actually in charge of the Ministry of the Opposition or the Ministry of Gold. I couldn't figure out whether it was the Ministry of Public Service. You see, Mr. Speaker, the minister spent 20 of her 30 plus 5 minutes, or 25, speaking about what is happening in the opposition, and another 5 about what is happening in Gold, and very little to nothing about what is happening in her own ministry. You see, Mr. Speaker, besides that, every minister that came up outside, I must give congrats to the Minister of Education, who this morning, I may not have agreed with everything that she said, but she spent most of her minutes giving us a sense of what she plans to do for her ministry, and I must commend her for that. For the Dr. Frank Anthony as well did that today, so I must commend the two of them for that. But the rest of the ministers came here and gave the Guyanese people no sense of what exactly they plan to do with this money that they have placed in this budget. And so I think that is sad. I think that we should expect more from the ministers. Yes, they know what they're doing, but they're here to let the Guyanese people, well, I hope they know what they're doing. I should hope that they know what they're doing. And if they do, then here is where you let the Guyanese people know that we're coming to this assembly, we're asking for $788 billion, and this is what we plan to do with the money that we're asking for. We heard from the Minister of Labor. Did we hear anything about what's happening in labor? We heard from the Minister of Public Service, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Public Service. I don't know if that is the worst speech that I've heard in the decades I've followed Parliament, but I was more disappointed in the minister because I expected more of the minister. And I don't know her personally, and I'm sure her family and friends think she's a wonderful person. But what was portrayed yesterday, I think as members of parliament, we could and we should do better. There's always a place for politics. There's always a place for showing that you know somebody's personal information. There's always a place for that. But when we stand here in the National Assembly, it is my honest opinion that we should get to the business of the Assembly and mind our behavior and attitude when it is that we are presenting here. So, wondering about now the public servants, Mr. Speaker, since the minister spoke very little about the public service, there are a lot of questions that I do have, and I'm not sure when we will be at a place for her to be able to respond to them. But I wonder about when you look at the budget and you look at the indicators, for example, the indicators that have done well over the last year were those that dealt with training. So there was a lot of work done where training is concerned. There was a lot of work done where goal is concerned. But all of the indicators that look at the actual policies to help the public service move from where it's at to where it should be have all reduced from where it was last year. Their target and where they actually got was actually reduced from last 2021 to 2022. And I think that is something that we need to look at, because if it is that you're going to come to the National Assembly and you're going to be asking for monies, then you need to be saying what policies are you going to be implementing to ensure that the monies are spent effectively. And so, Mr. Speaker, in spite of everything that is being said, I'm hoping that some of this comes over and comes across as not being facetious, not trying to demean anyone, but helping us to understand that more is expected of us and more should be done while we are in this assembly. So, Mr. Speaker, I have no clue whether or not over the last 2 years any new policies have been thought up, have been implemented to ensure that the public servants are better off now in terms of their becoming more professional, ensuring that their workspace is in what it is that they use to get their work done, the services that they have to carry out for the public, whether that has gotten better over time. So hopefully at some stage the minister would be able to speak to these things. I also noticed that in this 2023 budget that there is some talk about new policies being implemented. I heard the Minister of Labor at some point speaking to the fact that some outside person did an assessment of the labor force. And that is actually a good thing, but I'm hoping that we could get some more information on that, and that maybe that assessment could be laid in the House so that the country will get a sense of where we are, where labor is concerned, and what is required for us to move that forward. Because there's apparently a lot of conversation right now about, bringing persons into the country because there is some sort of labor shortage. And my question then is, what are we doing as a country to ensure that before we bring persons here, that we ensure that the Guyanese people who need jobs and are looking for jobs are in a position to take those jobs before you actually bring persons from outside for those jobs. So a link between the training that is happening in the public service and what is happening at the Ministry of Labor is actually necessary. And so I'm hoping that we can do something to deal with that. So, Mr. Speaker, I need to comment on something that I forgot I should have done a bit earlier. The Minister of Business, Tourism, I'm not even too sure what her portfolio is. Tourism, business, tourism, yes. Yes, the minister just spoke, and the Honourable Minister just spoke, and she was very good, and I commend her too, for citing Professor Thomas. She actually did quite a few times, and I was actually shocked that she went to Professor Thomas to quote him. And so if you went till the 1970s, I will bring us a bit further than 1970s, a bit closer. And the same Professor Thomas that she found to be very honorable and very sound, that she would be able to quote him, also said that we had an underground economy that accounts for $188 billion between the years 2001 to 2008. He estimated that the public procurement frauds which took place under the PPP, and this is in Kaitro News article, under the PPP amount to about $140 billion. And he said that he was calculated from the estimates provided by none other than the Guyana's former Auditor General, Anand Gusran, in Part 11 of a series in public financial management. So while it is all to go back all the way to the 1970s, when it was a whole totally different dynamics in the world economy and the local economy during that time. We're going closer to 2001 to 2008, where it is said by that same gentleman of what was happening when the PPP was in office. So we can use the same quotes. So, Mr. Speaker, I also would like to say to something that the minister also mentioned and spoke to what it is or how it is that the APNUFC would want to spend the oil monies. And she gave a hypothetical situation, and if for some reason the oil monies, the cost of oil reduces, what would then happen? All the subsidies that we give to persons would then have to dry up and all of those things. But let's look at it this way. The minister has not recognized that what they have just done with this particular budget is drain all of the current monies that we have and put it into capital projects. So let's do that what if scenario. What if, right? What if the oil, the cost of oil drops now, right? No money has gone to the people, but they're going to capital projects. So the cost of a barrel of oil drops now. What then happens? One, those contracts that you have started will have to stop halfway that you would have used the oil monies for. And the people would have received nothing from the oil funds. And so the people would be left no economically different than they are currently. And the capital projects would be just there for everybody to see have done, as with Skeldon, as the fiber optic cable, and other things that have done in the past. So when it is that you're making such statements, you have to be clear as to what exactly it is that you're saying. And what I think my colleague was saying earlier, Director of Finance, is that focusing on the current part of the budget is just as important, and it cannot be left to whims and fancies of anyone without recognizing that it is important to increase the salaries and wages of public servants, and also the ensuring that people have access and opportunities to access good funding so that they can remove themselves out of poverty. Now, Mr. Speaker, you know what is sad and what I recognize is that there are obviously two different philosophies. There is a philosophy that you focus on infrastructure, and then there's a philosophy where you focus on people. and in terms of development, because there are different phases of development, there are different types of development. Development is infrastructural development, but there's also human development. And if it is that we decide that we're going to utilize the majority of our budget and majority of the money from our natural resource fund to focus on capital and infrastructure and not as much on human development, then I think we're going in the wrong direction. Now, on one side of the thing, we have human development, yes, and maybe anybody would say just focusing on human development may not be the best option. I don't disagree with that. But I think we need to find a balance between capital investment and current investment. And sadly, this particular budget does not find that balance. And I think we need to do more where that is concerned. So, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot that can be said about this budget. There's a lot that can be said where this budget is concerned. A lot of of my colleagues have gone into specifically where they disagree with the budget. I wouldn't say that I disagree with everything. There are some projects that I think are good. There are some projects that I think are good for the country. But what I think needs to be understood is that when the people are the man in the street here that we have a 40% increase in a budget, and there's money from oil that they didn't think would ever happen, that for ages, and my parents have been saying that we have oil, we just haven't found it yet. Now that the money is being rolled in, they're expecting to get a little bit more from that than they currently are getting. So it's not a case that, no, don't do any capital projects, no, don't do any infrastructure, but it's about more, how do we put a little bit more monies into the pockets of those who need it, and those who after this year will see the roads, they will see the bridges, they will see the capital projects, but still can't feed their families. Is there any policy in the budget that deals with that? I'm seeing that I am saying that, for example, the Ministry of Social Protection, there is $3,000, there is $5,000 for the different sections of our society that particularly need it. But I believe that more is required. And that is what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, on that note, what I will say at the end is more is required of us. More has been demanded of us. With this the oil resources, I think we should do more for the people. And as if it is that we can possibly work together to get that done, I think we will be a better place in this country. There is such a divisiveness. There is such a divisiveness that is happening in our National Assembly and has seeped through the entire society that I think we need to recognize. I think sometimes we live off of it. We think politically that it is the best thing to do, to have our country divided, because that is how you can determine where your votes will come from. But at some point, if it is that as a society we are going to move forward, we need to do better than what we have been seeing over the last 5-10 years in this country, probably since independence. And so I will ask of the government side that, yes, you're in government. Some may say installed, you may disagree. Yes, you are there at the helm of power, but that does not mean that you have to wield all the power. And that's where what that means is that this allowing and discriminating and marginalizing against persons who you believe may not be on your side. That is not how a government should function. And so better should be expected of you and demanded of you, and you should do better. Thank you.